I still remember the smell of burnt toast and cheap perfume the morning our lives changed forever. I was 17. My little brother, Paul, had just turned 8. He was sitting cross-legged on the couch in his Spider-Man pajamas, munching dry cereal straight from the box, eyes glued to Saturday morning cartoons. I was trying to finish an essay for school, typing with one hand and cradling a mug of instant coffee with the other. Our parents were arguing in the hallway again. Not unusual, but this time, it felt different. Final. They'd been falling apart for years. Mom was always chasing some new get-rich-quick scheme, flipping between pyramid scams and influencer dreams. Dad? He was just absent, physically there but emotionally somewhere far away, usually with a bottle in hand. They weren't evil, exactly. Just careless. Self-absorbed. Broken in ways that didn't leave room for kids. That morning, they didn't slam the door like usual. They just left. No teary goodbye. No explanations. Not even a post-it note. Just gone. At first, I thought they'd come back. Maybe they needed space, or maybe this was another one of Mom's dramatic breaks. But days passed. Then a week. Bills piled up. The fridge emptied. And Paul kept asking, "When's Mom coming back?" I didn't know what to say. So I told him the only thing I could. "I've got you, okay? I'm not going anywhere." That's when everything shifted. I wasn't just his sister anymore. I was his parent, his protector, his everything. And I had no freaking clue what I was doing. I dropped out of school a month later. It wasn't some big decision. It was survival. No one was paying rent. There were no groceries. I tried calling our parents, dozens of times, but their phones were disconnected. I even went to Mom's last business meeting, address. Nothing. It was like they'd vanished on purpose. We were on our own. I took a job at a diner. Started with part-time, then begged my way into more hours. The manager, Tina, had a soft spot for me. Maybe she saw something in my eyes that reminded her of herself. She let me take leftover food home at night. That's how we ate for a while. Cold fries and microwaved pancakes. I forged a letter saying our parents were traveling abroad for work so I could enroll Paul in the local school without raising suspicion. It wasn't the best plan, but we were desperate. He never complained, not once. He just held my hand every morning, like it was the only thing tethering him to the world. One night, about 2 months in, Paul woke up crying. It wasn't a loud sobbing kind of cry. Just these soft, helpless sounds coming from his room. I found him curled under the blankets, clutching Mom's old hoodie. "She forgot my birthday," he whispered. It hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd been so busy trying to keep us afloat, I hadn't even realized. That moment shattered me. The next day, I spent half my paycheck buying a small cake, a used Lego set from a pawn shop, and a couple of dollar store balloons. I told him we were doing a late birthday party, because I wanted to surprise him. He smiled like it was the best thing in the world. That smile made every sacrifice worth it. But it wasn't all heartwarming moments and sibling hugs. There were days I thought I'd break. When the power got cut off for a week because I missed a bill. When Paul got the flu and I had to choose between buying medicine or paying rent. When the school called asking for parental paperwork I didn't have. I lived in constant fear of CPS knocking on our door. I kept the place spotless, made sure Paul looked presentable, and practiced fake answers to adult questions in the mirror. And yet, somehow, we made it. Paul started to thrive. He made friends. He brought home crayon drawings of the two of us, stick figures holding hands under a big yellow sun. And every night, he'd fall asleep after I read him the same battered copy of Where the Wild Things Are. I wasn't just raising him. He was giving me a reason to keep going. Then, 3 years in, something happened that rattled me to the core. Paul came home from school unusually quiet. I asked him what was wrong, and he handed me a crumpled flyer. It was for a local family influencer meetup. Posted by, wait for it, our mother. Her smiling face was right there, printed in full color next to the words, "Reclaiming Motherhood, My Journey Back." I sat down hard on the couch. She was back. And she wanted the world to think she was some sort of hero. That night I couldn't sleep. My heart was pounding, my thoughts racing. After everything, after abandoning us like we were nothing, now she wanted to pretend she was the perfect mom? For Instagram likes? I didn't know what she was planning yet, but I had a gut feeling. This wasn't just a one-time stunt. Something bigger was coming. And I needed to protect Paul all over again. After I saw that flyer with my mom's face on it, I spent the rest of the night just spiraling. I had no idea where she'd been for the past 3 years. No calls, no letters, no sign of remorse or even curiosity about the kids she left behind. And now she was calling herself some kind of motherhood comeback story. What kind of twisted joke was that? But I couldn't afford to panic. I had a life to maintain, a fragile, pieced-together life that I'd built from nothing. And more importantly, I had Paul. He was 11 now, just hitting that stage where he was starting to question things more deeply. About our parents. About why his life looked different from his classmates. About why I always looked so tired. So I tucked that flyer into the drawer where I kept the other ghosts, shut it, and moved on. At least, that's what I told myself. In reality, things were finally starting to feel steady. We'd moved into a one-bedroom apartment with working heat, and a fridge that didn't sound like it was dying every time it kicked on. Paul had his own bed, his own desk, and a collection of books he'd somehow fallen in love with: Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, all those Kid Heroes series. He'd also started drawing. Every day after school, he'd sit at the table with a cheap sketchpad I'd bought from the dollar store and just go to town. Superheroes, dragons, little cartoon versions of us going on adventures. "I made you a cape," he said one day, showing me a doodle of me flying through the sky with him on my back. "You already gave me one." I smiled. "Every time you hug me." Cringy, I know. But I meant it. I'd managed to get my GED and was working full-time at a local mechanic shop. The boss, Jorge, was a grumpy teddy bear who didn't ask questions but always slipped me a few extra bucks when things were tight. We weren't rich. Far from it. But we had food, safety, love, things our childhood home had been missing, even when it was full. The only real thorn in my side was the growing popularity of my mom's so-called redemption arc. Turns out she'd grown quite a following online, mostly other parents clinging to the "it's never too late" narrative. She posted photos of herself volunteering at shelters, giving parenting advice, and telling half-true stories about how she was working to reconnect with her children. What children? We hadn't heard a single word from her since she left. That changed in the spring. I got the message during my lunch break, an Instagram DM from an account named @realmom_Julie. "Hi, sweetheart. I've been trying to find the courage to reach out. I miss you both every day. Can we meet?" My hands went cold. I didn't respond right away. I didn't even know what to say. The rage that bubbled up in me was volcanic, hot, deep, and old. But there was also fear. What did she want? Why now? I didn't tell Paul about the message. Instead, I talked to Jorge after my shift. I don't know what made me blurt it out, but I did, everything. The abandonment, the years alone, the message. I hadn't really talked to anyone about it in depth before. He didn't say much. Just listened, arms crossed, leaning against the hood of a rusted-out Ford. Then he said, "Family ain't who makes you. It's who stays." Weeks passed, and I tried to shake it off. I ignored the message. Blocked her account. Kept my head down. Then Paul came home with another surprise. "I saw Mom today," he said, so casually I nearly dropped the pot I was stirring. My heart stopped. "Where?" "At school. She was outside talking to Ms. Renee." Ms. Renee was Paul's guidance counselor. A kind woman who always kept an eye out for Paul, but she didn't know the full story. I'd kept things vague when I enrolled him. Looking back, maybe too vague. "She gave me a card," Paul said, pulling it from his backpack. Said she missed me? It was pastel pink, covered in glitter, and completely empty inside except for one line. Let's catch up soon. Love, Mom. I nearly threw it into the trash, but Paul stopped me. Do you think she really means it this time? He asked. And that right there, that question? That was the most gut-wrenching thing I'd heard in a long time. Because I could see it in his eyes. That sliver of hope. That tiny, painful hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the villain in our story. I knelt beside him and said the hardest thing I've ever said. She might mean it, Bud. But that doesn't mean it's safe. That night, I called Ms. Renee and told her everything. The abandonment, the years without contact, the way Mom was suddenly appearing now that she had an online audience. To her credit, Ms. Renee apologized profusely and said she hadn't realized the extent of it. She promised to keep Paul safe at school and keep his mom away. But that wasn't the end of it. A week later, I got a certified letter. It was from a lawyer. My parents were petitioning for partial custody of Paul. The letter was wrapped in fake concern, saying things like, rebuilding familial bonds, and a stable two-parent environment. There were even printed screenshots of my mom's Instagram posts showing her doing good work. But I saw it for what it was. They wanted Paul back, not because they loved him, but because they saw a chance to parade him around like a redemption trophy for their social media clout. And they were willing to fight me for him. I wish I could say I was surprised when that custody letter came in, but deep down, I'd been waiting for the other shoe to drop. Still, seeing it in black and white hit different. It wasn't just some cryptic message or a passive-aggressive card anymore. This was legal. Real. They were trying to take Paul away from me. The first thing I did was sit down and talk to Paul. He was 12 by then, not quite a teenager, but not a little kid either. Old enough to know when something serious was going on. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told him the truth, that Mom and Dad were trying to get custody, that it might involve court, and that we were going to fight it. His face went pale. He didn't cry, but he looked like he wanted to. Instead, he just asked, "Do I have to go with them if they win?" That shattered me. "No," I said. "Not without a fight. Not ever without a fight." It turns out, custody battles aren't just about love or who's been there, they're about paperwork. Documents. Proof. And guess who had years of staged Instagram posts showing her feeding homeless people, volunteering at schools, and posting captions like, "I may have stumbled, but motherhood is my redemption." Yup. Julie. My mom. She'd basically curated a highlight reel of motherhood without ever actually being one. I, on the other hand, had pay stubs, rent receipts, and pictures of Paul's birthday cakes made from box mix and cheap frosting. I had school records, doctor appointments, and drawings he made of us fighting dragons and eating pancakes. But nothing fancy. Nothing curated. Just real. When we finally saw them again, it wasn't in a courtroom. It was in front of our apartment building, where they, coincidentally, showed up with a small camera crew. I kid you not. A full-on camera crew. Microphones, ring lights, the whole thing. Julie walked up to me like we were best friends reconnecting after brunch. "Sweetheart," she said, arms outstretched. "It's been too long." Behind her, my dad gave a stiff nod. I hadn't heard a single word from him since they left, but now he stood there like some kind of accessory to her image, new haircut, button-down shirt, forced smile. "What's the camera for?" I asked. "Oh, it's just for a little project," she said. "A docuseries about healing families. Nothing invasive, just capturing the journey." I laughed. Right there, in her face. A real, bitter laugh that I couldn't hold in. "You abandoned us. And now you're turning it into content?" She blinked. "Don't be dramatic. You know we were struggling. We just needed time. We're trying to reconnect now." Paul peeked out the window upstairs. I waved him back, not wanting him involved in whatever this circus was. "I don't care what story you're trying to sell," I said. "You're not using my brother as your redemption arc." Julie's smile twitched. "He's our son. He's my brother. I shot back. The one you left with a teenager and a bag of canned food. They left after that. But I knew it wasn't over. 2 weeks later, we got court papers. They were seeking joint custody, claiming they'd gotten their lives together and were ready to rebuild as a family. Their lawyer was slick, all smiles and fake concern. He cited all the social media evidence. Their steady income now, Dad had gotten a sales job at a car dealership, and said they'd even moved into a kid-friendly home with a spare room for Paul. I managed to get a legal aid attorney, Carla, who was an absolute beast. She listened to my whole story without interrupting, then looked me dead in the eye and said, "We're going to bury them in facts." We spent days pulling together documentation, school reports, letters from Paul's teachers, neighbors who vouched for us, even Jorge, my boss, wrote a statement. I wasn't flashy, but I was consistent. And consistent beats convenient every time. But the worst part? Paul started to waver. It wasn't his fault. He was just a kid. And they were saying all the right things now. Talking about Disney trips, new clothes, a trampoline in the backyard. They were promising the kind of shiny childhood that looked good on Instagram, and sounded amazing to a boy who grew up watching his older brother clip coupons and turn hot dogs into 3 meals. One night, after dinner, Paul sat on the edge of the couch and asked, "Do you think they mean it this time?" I didn't have an answer. I wanted to say no, scream it even. But I knew if I pushed too hard, I'd only make him more curious. So I just said, "I think they mean something. I just don't think they know how to be parents." "But what if they're better now?" he asked. "What if we could be a real family again?" That one cut deep. Because in all these years, I'd done everything I could to be that real family. And somehow, he still saw what they had as something I couldn't give. I didn't blame him. Not really. But it still hurt like hell. The court date arrived fast. Too fast. They showed up dressed like they were attending church, matching pastel colors, Julie wearing a necklace with 2 little boy charms, like she'd been keeping us close to her heart this whole time. I brought Paul. He wanted to speak to the judge himself. Said he needed to be heard. He stood there in his too big dress shirt, the same one he wore to the middle school awards ceremony last fall, and he told the judge, "My brother raised me. He's the one who stayed. He's the one who knows my favorite food and what books I like and how I hate thunderstorms. They left me. He didn't." Even the judge looked shaken. But it wasn't over yet. Because Julie had one more move to play. A week after the hearing, I found a video on her Instagram titled, "Reunited, My Son Speaks His Truth, Red Heart." And there was Paul, or at least an old video of him at the school gates the day she'd given him the card. She had edited it with soft music, slow motion, captions about second chances, and her followers were eating it up. Thousands of likes. Hundreds of comments saying how brave she was. How forgiving Paul looked. How powerful it was that she was fighting to heal. They didn't see the manipulation, the stage drama. The fact that she hadn't raised him, hadn't changed a single diaper or stayed up for a single fever. I wanted to throw my phone at the wall. But I didn't. Because I had one more fight left in me. When the judge came back with a decision, my heart felt like it was going to burst out of my chest. Paul sat beside me, clutching my sleeve like he did when he was little and scared of the dark. I didn't know what I was going to say to him if things went sideways. I didn't have a speech prepared, no backup plan. All I knew was that if the court gave my parents custody, I'd have to fight again. And again. And again if I had to. But then the judge spoke. He acknowledged everything, the history, the abandonment, the sudden reappearance of our parents, and their online brand. He said that while people can change, real parenting isn't about a redemption arc. It's about presence, consistency, love, not cameras and curated stories. And then he said the words I'd barely dared to hope for. Full legal custody will remain with the older brother. Petition for joint custody is denied. I didn't cry. Paul did, though, right there in court, silent tears rolling down his face as he leaned into me. And all I could do was hold him. Not as a brother doing his best. Not as a kid pretending to be a grown-up. But as the person who had always been there. Julie stormed out. I think she muttered something about still winning in the court of public opinion. Whatever that meant. Dad didn't say a word. He just looked tired. Smaller than I remembered. After everything, I thought maybe they'd back off. But a few weeks later, one of Julie's followers messaged me screenshots of her new post. A picture of her crying in her kitchen with the caption, "When the system fails you, but you know you're still his real mom in your heart." She kept posting about losing a son, even though she never really tried to have one in the first place. At first, I was furious. But honestly, I'm over it now. Because I don't need strangers on the internet to validate what Paul and I have. He's not a photo op. He's not a trophy or a second chance to fix her image. He's my little brother. My kid. My family. A few months passed. Life settled down. We finally started sleeping through the night again without worrying about surprise visits or custody hearings. One Saturday, Paul and I were at the grocery store. I was comparing cereal prices when he suddenly asked, "Can I call you something?" I looked at him, kind of confused. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "I mean, I know you're my brother. But you've kind of always been, like a dad too. So is it okay if I call you bro-dad or something dumb like that?" I laughed. A real, deep belly laugh, the kind I hadn't had in a while. "Yeah," I said, ruffling his hair. "I think that's perfect. It hasn't been easy. I still work too much, worry too much, and barely have time for myself. But Paul is thriving. He made the honor roll. He's obsessed with chess now. And just last week, he told me he wants to be a teacher when he grows up. So other kids feel seen, the way you see me." That one nearly broke me in the best way. I used to think parenting meant being perfect. But now I know it's just showing up. Again and again. Through the mess, through the exhaustion, through the doubt. It's about staying when others leave. So yeah, maybe our story isn't flashy or viral worthy. But it's real. And it's ours. And no staged Instagram post can ever compete with that.